Good evening and welcome to the Westborough Select Board meeting called here on Tuesday, January 24th, 2023. Just to note, this meeting will be live streamed and recorded by Westborough TV. I would ask all those that are able to please rise and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge of allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. So first thing on our agenda this evening is open forum. No one had approached me, but is there anybody here tonight for open forum?
Yes, good evening. Fred Lenaro, Community Development Director. Just very briefly, I'm just here to introduce the new Conservation Director. She comes way of experience through Seekonk, and I'll have her introduce herself, if you don't mind.
Thanks. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you, Jennifer Miller. Happy to be here as the new Conservation Director. I've got a solid week under my belt at this point. So it's been a bit of a whirlwind, but it's been great so far. Fred's really been great taking me around and showing me all the different parts of Westborough, so I feel like I'm getting a good sense of some of the different projects and priorities, which is fantastic. But excited to be here and happy to answer questions as they come up.
Great. Well, thank you
Thank
very
you.
much. We're excited to have you and look forward to working with you as we go forward.
All right. Thank you so much.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Fred, thanks for bringing Jennifer. Anybody else here for open forum? Okay, next on our agenda, and this was postponed from our last meeting, just so we could get more people in attendance, because I know he was hoping for a big, a big crowd for this. But this is exciting for us to recognize the Employee of the Year, Mr. Earl Story. Christy, do you want to?
So as the board is aware, we have a town staff committee that runs an Employee Excellence Award program. Employees can be nominated by other employees, and so each month an employee is chosen. At the end of the fiscal year, the committee chooses one winner from the preceding 12 months as the Employee of the Year. So at the end of fiscal 22, Earl Story was chosen as the Employee of the Year, and I just wanted to read his nomination. Earl Story was born and raised in Westborough and truly loves this town. It is evident in how involved he is and how hard he works to keep this town beautiful. If you need to know the history behind something, who did it, how it was done, Earl is the guy who knows everything. It's true. He's always willing to educate you or help you with whatever you need, always displaying his witty humor and honest personality. Earl has worked for the DPW for many years, taking care of our parks, while also volunteering as the chair of the Recreation Commission. He can often be seen on his mower at the Lake Chauncey soccer fields, working tirelessly and diligently over the years to turn that land into a beautiful space for passive and active recreation. Another gem in our community that Earl is behind is the Westborough Golf Club, where he has put in countless hours to improve the buildings and grounds for the benefit of the community. When you look around the town, it is a pretty safe bet that Earl Story was somehow involved in figuring out how to use that space or improve it. Some but not all examples are Bay State Commons, Veterans Freedom Park, the pickleball court, Upper and Lower Haskell Fields, Greg's Field, the State Hospital property, and the athletic fields at the high school. Westborough is a better and more beautiful community because of Earl, and as such, he is a deserving recipient of the Town of Westborough Employee Excellence Award.
Great, thank you. And Earl, on behalf of the Board of Select Board, we do have a citation for you that in recognition of being named the Employee of the Year, the Select Board congratulates and wishes to acknowledge Earl Story for his efforts, service, and dedication to the Westborough community, and that's signed by the 5 of us here, as well as a gift card for you.
Thank you very much. Pretty humbling, that is. Christy, you really outdid yourself there. But, you know, I just keep this short, but I love the town. I love the job. Have a lot of help. You know, I've got a great support group at the DPW. They're always there to help me at any time I need. And Chris Pant, and Derek, second to none to work with. And my special thanks, I gotta say, to Jen Kirkland, the rec director, because she's always got my back and keeps me in line and stuff like that when I start to get a little straight. But she's right there for me all the time. But no, I love the town and done a lot of projects with you, Ian. So you know, we've done things together, and you too, Shelby. So hopefully I can continue on. Thank you so much.
Yeah, do you want one?
Get a picture.
Keeping you in line.
There you go.
Just block me.
Like a grouchy old man.
Well, thank you, Earl. I mean, we have so many wonderful employees in the town, but truthfully, I don't know of anybody more deserving. So thank you for all that you do. You know, this is a well-deserved recognition for you, so thank you.
We could
Else on the
go
board?
on, we could go on and on. It has been a pleasure to work with you on many different projects, and your knowledge and love for the town extends, I mean, as Christy said, but really it extends beyond even kind of your scope of work. You know, your interest in the town's governance and how things work, and providing not only historical views but contemporary views is so valued. And you're always honest and sometimes brutally so, but it's usually with that chuckle following it, and you know what you're getting. And so thank you for all that you do. You make our community a much better place every day.
Okay. Well, Earl, thank you very much. And thank you, everybody that were here for Earl. And if you're only here for Earl, you are welcome to stay for everything else, too.
We'll just note who leaves, right?
Yeah,
No,
exactly.
just-
We do have our public hearing for our fiscal year '24 budget at 6:15, so we're a little early for that, but I am going to go off script here for a minute because there is somebody in the audience I did want to recognize, because tonight will be her last official meeting with us as a board after many years as assistant town clerk and then town clerk. So I'd just like to recognize Wendy Mickle for all that you've done on behalf of the town as well. And thank you. We'll miss you, but you've set up the office well, and we look forward to the election time and for your successor too. So, but thank you for everything you've done. We definitely will miss you, but we know that you will stay involved in town, stay involved with your family here in town and grandchildren. So, but thank you very much. Sorry for going off agenda. Hope I don't get in trouble for that. Approved.
So moved.
Chris, just because we have a few minutes, anything you want to address early?
Probably just, do you want to do the minutes?
Sure.
Or the waiver of permit fees?
Yeah, do you want to do the waiver of permit fees? Do you want to do that one, Alan? So we're going to move to item 8, which is the waiver of permit, or the request for a waiver of permit fees and utility fees for Westborough Affordable Housing Project at 3 Baylor Ave. And,
Sure, thank you. So as the community is hopefully aware, the Westborough Affordable Housing Trust acquired the property at 3 Baylor Avenue from the town, which had taken it for unpaid taxes following the owner of the property was deceased and there were no next of kin. It sat idle. It's been idle for almost 7 years. The trust paid the town the back taxes and took ownership of the property last summer, and we're currently actively working to redevelop the property into an affordable home. And we're currently working to finalize the request for proposal that will go out to developers and construction companies, community groups that may want to do that work. We are respectfully requesting that the select board waive sewer connection and privilege fees for the property, as well as any permit or inspection fees that would come through the building department as part of the project. The request is, twofold. Is being a separate entity but still part of the town by bylaw. The town has a history of waiving fees on other town projects. Additionally, the machinations of affordable housing, this property will be built under what's known as the Local Initiative Plan, or LIP program. And a component of that is called a Local Action Unit, or an LAU. And there are criteria for qualifying as a local action unit. One of them is that the town has provided goods or services to subsidize the project. And so waiving the fees would be, is considered by DHCD a subsidy on the project. It would help qualify the property as a local action unit. By being a local action unit, it's easier to develop the property without having to go through the Zoning Board of Appeals for a comprehensive permit. And you can simply work with the planning board to make sure we're in zoning compliance and still qualify as a subsidized housing unit. And so it'll save money for the trust as well as the developer, and keep the cost of the house even more affordable.
Great. Thank you, Alan. And just to be clear, and I think Alan said this, but in waiving the fee, what the board is agreeing to is that the town will not receive the fee as a revenue. However, it does not mean that the town will pay for any costs that will typically charge to an applicant homeowner. You're still going through the process of building, but it's just the waiving of those fees, which, as you said, is standard practice for us for
So
town properties.
and the one cost would be sewer hookup.
Yep.
There's a stub, it's old, it's never been used, it may work, it may even need to be replaced. So any cost for the stub or connecting the stub to the house would be part of the project, and the town would be, the DPW would be paid for that work.
Thank you. So do we have a motion? Do you want to make a motion?
Sure.
Yeah, sorry, I would just mention one other thing, right? Although we're waiving inspection fees, all necessary inspections are still required.
Oh, yes.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. So, and I will also say that the Community Development Department has been very helpful up to date in helping the trust understand the current property and what can and can't be done with it. So it's been great. So I move to waive all permit fees under the control of the Select Board and sewer connection and privilege fees associated with the Affordable Housing Trust project at 3 Baylor Avenue.
Seconded.
Okay, moved and seconded. Any further questions? Not all those in favor? It's 5-0, 5 being present.
Thank you.
So we are at 6:15. Just before we kind of open up the public hearing, I did want to make a note on the agenda. I should have done this earlier, but item 5, which is the safety net program presentation, just received notification at the beginning of the meeting that the police department cannot be here tonight due to illness, so we are going to postpone that to our next meeting. So they've asked that that get postponed. So apologies for that, but didn't want it, folks were here for that, just wanted to let them know. Okay, and now we're at the budget hearing at this meeting. This is a public hearing, so I would request a motion to open the public hearing.
So moved.
Seconded.
Moved and seconded. All those in favor? It's 5-0, 5 being present. Tried to give you time to get set up while we were doing that, Christie, but
Sorry.
I was too quick, so I apologize. So anyways, this is A required action per our town charter, Section 6.5, action on the budget, that the Board of Selectmen, the Advisory Finance Committee, and the Capital Expenditures Planning Committee shall hold a joint meeting to include a public hearing on the proposed budget not later than the first scheduled Board of Selectmen's meeting in February of the year that the budget is to be considered at town meeting. Copies of the proposed budget, the current capital improvement program under Section 6.6, and the recommendations of the Advisory Finance Committee, if any, shall be made available for distribution to the public at or prior to the public hearing. Again, the recommendations of the Advisory Finance Committee are not available. That will be available for town meeting, but just doing that. So this, again, is of review as is standard, as I said, per the town charter, and this is a joint meeting. And I see those folks here. I don't know if those chairs want to call their meeting to order, or if they want to be called to order under our action, but this is a joint meeting with the Capital Expenditures Planning Committee and Advisory Finance Committee. Yeah, or I can call it for you if that's how. Please. Okay. So I have called the meeting to order for all parties.
Thank you. So as Ian said, this is required under the charter, no later than the first meeting in February. The past couple of years, we've actually done it at the second meeting in January because we've been holding that budget summit at the last Thursday in January, which is going to be held again on Thursday morning, beginning at 8:30 in the Forbes Hall, and that's a joint meeting of the Select Board and the Advisory Finance Committee, where you'll hear from some of the larger departments as well as some of the departments that have some significant changes to their budgets. The budget has been available online since December 21st. It's required under the charter to be available beginning 10 days before the end of the calendar year. So December 21st, that was published online. And that is made available through the town manager section of the town website. We have the entire budget as one document with bookmarks, and then we also have it sectioned out depending on what you're looking for. This is just showing that we're continuing to follow our GFOA guidelines for the distinguished budget presentation. This was our third year receiving it for our FY23 budget. Continuing to follow that, so hopeful to receive it again. This shows our budget process. It's the same process that we've been following for the past couple of years. One thing to note is that this November 8th, 2022 date, it's when the budgets were due and also the program improvement requests. So that's something that's new to this budget process and something I'll talk about more in the presentation. Also new this year was the development of a budget manual. This was developed prior to the October town meeting, so that's why you're seeing the old town seal. But this is really an internal document. It was developed really to support department heads in the development of their budgets. It's information that they've previously received, but really put into one document. In addition, we talked in the document about the level service budget and how to create that and what that means. It also provides the guidelines for our narratives, the location of budget forms, meeting deadlines, and then that program improvement request form. The program improvement request form is really the new piece to our budget process this year. Unlike years before, what we asked the department heads to do was to present first to us the level service budget. So that's the budget that's inclusive of all of the current staffing that they have, anything in their expense budget that helps them provide the current level of service. Understanding that those numbers would increase due to COLAs or other inflationary variables. And then the program improvement request is anything new in addition to what they wanted to provide for the upcoming fiscal year. So that's any additional personnel requests, any new programs. The program request form asks for explanations as to why they need it. And specifically, something that we've been talking about a lot, and we did talk about at the budget summit, is all of the plans that we've developed over the years. So asking what plans we might be following, the strategic plan, the climate action plan, what is the program request in support of? You can see with the program improvement request in your budget documents. So this is just an example and sort of an abbreviated budget table for the IT department. But between the department request line and the manager recommendation line column, you'll find the program improvement request column. And that shows the total of the improvement requests for that line item, and then whatever was recommended by the town manager, myself, carries forward into that last column. This year, we're projecting an average single-family tax bill increase of $896. That's actually an increase from what was in your budget books, which was $888. The driving factor behind that delta is the landfill budget, which I'll talk more about further in the presentation. One of the things we wanted to note was that at this point last year, we were projecting over a $1,200 increase to the average single family, and that was with deferring all of those what would have been program improvement requests. And so this year, that 896 is inclusive of several program improvement requests, including things that were deferred last year. So we'll walk through what those are. This is where we compare for fiscal 23 for our average single family tax bill. We're the green line in the middle. This slide just shows the history of our excess levy capacity, understanding that when we grow our excess levy capacity, that means that we're living within that Prop 2.5. These are outstanding budget items. So as you know, we have an early town meeting, an early budget cycle, so there's a lot of things that we don't know at this point. One is our insurance budget. We don't have a final amount for that. Specifically health insurance, we're experience rated, so we usually wait closer to town meeting to finalize the health insurance numbers. Assabet has not given us our assessment number yet. State aid, we typically find that out at the end of January. This being an election year, the budget is due March 1st. I was at MMA over the weekend, and they committed to letting us know sooner than that, but we haven't received anything at this point. And then we have 4 outstanding union contracts that would be in place for FY24 on the town side, and then the landfill budget is something, again, we'll talk more about. This shows estimated increases. So it shows the fiscal 23 increase as well as the estimated increase for fiscal 24, both in percentage for fiscal 24 as well as dollar amount, and then the estimated impact to the average single family. Again, just noting that the town budgets don't reflect 4 union contract COLA adjustments. Getting more detailed in what's driving that increase. When we show the different town budgets, we show them as salary and wages and expenses. So our salary and wages, again, not including those 4 unions, is going up 1.49%, and then expenses 9.87%. And this is getting into the details of that. So for salary and wages, some of those program improvements, we've added some positions in fiscal 24. We're recommending them. For animal control, we're recommending a part-time animal control officer at 12 hours per week. This is to provide coverage on the weekends and additional hours as needed, up to that 12 hours per week. The cost to add this position is $13,061. However, Grafton, through our intermunicipal agreement, does fund 38% of that total budget. So they'll be funding 38% of that cost. One of the positions that was deferred last year was the sustainability coordinator / community development assistant. This is a recommendation for a full-time position within the community development department, responsible for achieving sustainability goals, supporting community development as needed. This is recommended by the Climate Action Plan. Some additional staffing for community development is also recommended by the staffing study. So the total salary cost that we're budgeting for fiscal 24 is at $70,179. However, we do have grant funds available from the utilities through our Mass Save grant. So we're able to offset that cost by $30,000 with that grant money. Council on Aging has recommended some additional hours for several of their positions: outreach case manager, administrative assistant, Asian outreach worker, homemaker, and handyman. The total cost of this is $33,950. However, it's going to be fully funded by the state formula grant. We were able to recognize that increased grant amount because of the 2020 census, and so our formula grant went up, and this is the use of that money. So there's no impact to the average single-family tax bill. The Department of Public Works, we're recommending the addition of the maintenance craftsperson in the tree department. So that's a full-time position to maintain the town's tree canopy. It's an additional position that's recommended through the staffing study. This position is about $64,000, 90% funded through the general fund, so the impact would be that $8, and then 10% funded through the water enterprise fund, so that's funded through user fees. The second position is fully funded through user fees. It's a maintenance craftsperson in the sewer department, full-time position, 90% funded through sewer and 10% through water. The fire department is requesting some additional staffing. So we're recommending 1 firefighter paramedic at 42 hours a week. This is also a recommendation of their organizational assessment. The budget includes 1 position. However, we've encouraged the fire chief to pursue the remaining ARPA funding for additional positions. And so that would go through the same process that we've gone through related to all of the ARPA projects. And it'll go through the finance team making a recommendation, AFC recommending, and then finally to you for award. But so for this budget, the impact is that 1 firefighter, or $11 to the average single family. In information technology, in addition to the staffing study, which called for some additional positions or additional support, we also had that information technology assessment, which was presented to you recently. So one of the positions and one of the recommendations was the network systems administrator. So we're recommending a full-time position in the IT department that would be responsible for upgrades, migrations, and network security, and that's a $94,000 position. In the police department, something that's not new to you because it has already been approved through the use of ARPA funds, is the 3 additional patrol officers. So the ARPA funds were awarded so that these 3 new positions could be added effective July 1st, 2022. And then the idea was that they were going to be the cost of that would be incrementally moved onto the budget using ARPA funds to offset annually through fiscal 26. So the total cost of those 3 positions in the FY24 budget is that $234,000. But the budget increase is $75,000 with $160,000 of ARPA funds being used. And that's per how it was awarded by this board. The library is requesting 3 additional hours per week for their circulation outreach assistant. It's already a full-time benefited position at 21 hours, so this is 3 additional hours that would increase off-site programs. In moving to expenses, the hazardous waste day, which was taken out of the budget during COVID, came back last year as a warrant article for the town meeting to consider whether or not that's something they wanted to move forward. Town meeting did approve it. What we are proposing for this year is that the hazardous waste day actually become a part of the regularly recurring articles as opposed to being in the budget. Still funded as a reason appropriate because it is an operating expense, but similar to how we do tuition reimbursement and healthcare reimbursement where we fund to a certain level, we would keep that account at $30,000 and annually add back to it just to get back to that $30,000 so that any remaining money could roll over to the following year. In the community development department, we're expanding our Permit Pro. That's something that you hear a lot about because a lot of our departments have started implementing that. So this is expanding Permit Pro for planning board permits. Information technology, again, another one of the recommendations that came out of our IT assessment is the migration to Microsoft 365. The total cost of this is $40,000, but implementation of this creates some savings in the level service budget, so the increase is the $23,700. The police department for body-worn cameras, there's need for additional storage, and so that's that $13,000 cost in front of you. And then in youth and family services, as you're aware, a few years ago, we started offering the interface referral service. That's something that was funded by the school department with the expectation that in the future the youth and family services would take on half the cost of that. And so that's being recommended at the $12,000 with the school paying the other half of that. Moving on to fixed costs, which is really where we've experienced our biggest increase. We have included in fixed costs that we're going to talk about is the insurance budget, the electricity budget, and that landfill budget. And looking at health insurance, this chart goes back to 2010. As you can see, in recent years, we did experience some very small increases for our health insurance, with it going up to 9% in fiscal 23. At this point this year, we're budgeting a 7% increase in our health insurance. Again, we're waiting to finalize those numbers until February. This is just a list of some of the things that we've done over the years. You've seen this before, ways that we're trying to mitigate those increases, with the most recent being the introduction of the high deductible plan option. That has a lower premium, so it's cheaper for the subscriber and cheaper for the town. And then the town had committed to 2 years of funding a contribution to the health savings account. And that started September 1st of this past fall. Electricity. The town's current electric supply contract expires on June 30th of 2023. The electricity budget before you reflects a 30% estimated increase for fiscal 24 based on current market increases. We get supply through Mune Energy as a member of the Massachusetts Municipal Association. So that's a program specific for municipalities that offers many benefits, which are listed here. The board authorized me in November to sign a contract. We're continuing to watch those rates, so we have not signed a contract at this time, when we're actually seeing them going down from when we first saw them. So we're continuing to monitor, understanding that the shoulder seasons are really the right time to lock into a supply. And then for the landfill. So the town has been informed that Waste Connections, which was formerly E.L. Harvey's, does not intend to continue operating the transfer station after June 30th of 2024. We have an annual contract with Harvey's. We always have. And so we were lucky that they gave us this lead time to understand how we might move forward after the transfer station is no longer accessible to the public. The budget book estimates a $50 per ton cost, which is only a couple dollars more than what we were charged in fiscal 23. However, the latest quote that we've received is actually an $85 per ton cost. And so that's what is driving that landfill budget up, and that $175,000 increase, which is the difference between that $888 that you saw in your budget book and the $896 that I showed you tonight for the average single family increase. Before we knew any of this, the board put together the Waste Management Exploratory Committee. That committee continues to do its work in terms of evaluating waste programs, and now they'll continue to move forward towards that October 2023 town meeting date with a recommendation, checking in with the board, evaluating all the programs and reporting back. And now they understand that the transfer station wouldn't be part of that in the future. In addition to talking about the budget, we just wanted to talk about how we manage our reserves. This is the reserve summary. So this is what you see in the Advisory Finance Committee report. As you can see, if we were to approve all of the free cash articles that are on the warrant, our free cash and stabilization would be at 12.69%, which is within our fiscal management policy of that 10 to 15%. This is a chart you've seen many times, which really shows the growth of free cash, but what we added to it this year is the free cash that's appropriated. So you can see that that red bar is the free cash that was appropriated in each fiscal year. And so if you look at it on a percentage basis, we appropriate between 18 and 22% of our free cash each year. In fiscal 22, we certified almost $16 million in free cash. And so we're actually recommending that we use about 29% of our free cash. So that's that $4.5 million that you see on that red bar in fiscal 22. In addition, we're recommending that we transfer $1.8 million to stabilization from free cash. We base that $1.8 million based on our fiscal comprehensive fiscal management policies. We shoot for being between 5 and 7.5% of our general fund operating budget in both free cash and stabilization individually. we arrived at that 1.8% based on the operating budget for fiscal '23 because that's a known number. So even though it doesn't get us to that 5%, it's based on the current budget. So you can see in the chart that we currently have $15.1 million in free cash because that recognizes the $770,000 that was spent at the October town meeting. So currently we're at 12.59% for free cash individually, and with the proposed balance, we would be at that 7.93, so still just over. The comprehensive fiscal management policy also contemplates what to do when we're over that 10 to 15%. So one of the recommendations is to use the free cash to lower the tax rate, and another is to fund unfunded liabilities such as OPEB. So as you can see here, we have used free cash to lower the tax rate. We did that first in fiscal '21 as in response to COVID. Because we received an extraordinary increase in state aid for fiscal '22, we were able to close that structural deficit quickly, even though we weren't anticipating that. In fiscal '23, we recommended the use of $1 million of free cash to lower the tax rate, with the recommendation to come off of that $1 million when we recognize savings in the budget. And so because of savings that we were able to recognize before the budget was approved, that lowered to the 471,259. In fiscal '24, we're working off of that amount slightly, and so we're recommending the $450,000 to lower the tax rate. And then we're also using free cash to fund unfunded liabilities. So this is the comprehensive fiscal management policy portion that was updated in February 8th of 2022. And so that includes use of free cash for OPEB as we move the cost of OPEB back onto the budget. So in fiscal '24, we're appropriating $200,000 of free cash, and then we're also raising $200,000 on the levy. And then this shows our total town reserves. So that 7.93 I had mentioned, the 4.73 for stabilization, and then the combined would be that 12.69%, which puts us right in the middle of the 10 to 15% goal. Other financial resources, we always show those top four, the sale of real estate, open space, Walkup Robinson, and OPEB. The top three have all been used to purchase property in recent years. So Belknap Street, Daypray property, and the Ruggles Street property. And then we've added the American Rescue Plan, or the ARPA money. That was a $5.7 million grant, of which we have $193,000 balance of not awarded projects. So understanding that we're going to continue to monitor the status of the projects and that there might be more money falling to that line. But that money has been used for capital projects, emergency repair, and police personnel. And then one point we wanted to make was that in FY22, townwide grant awards exceeded $4.8 million. So that's grants that town departments as well as school departments received. And looking at our capital plan, we're continuing to follow the same policy where we're putting all capital projects into the plan. I think it gets better every year. People are really working hard to make sure that this is an all-inclusive document. We've increased the information related to our long-range capital outlook, and then we continue to fund capital projects at that goal of 1 to 1.5% of the general fund operating budget. It's just an example of the format that we use. This is a listing of all of the capital requests that are within the capital article. We have typical vehicle replacements, security system upgrades, the diesel exhaust system replacement in the fire department. Technology department, we have network upgrades and infrastructure updates. That Office 365 for the initial startup cost. Cruisers, buildings and grounds maintenance, administrative vehicles, wood chipper replacement, bucket truck replacement, six-wheel dump replacement. We also have in recreation an indoor golf simulator, utility tractor replacement, and then in the schools we have money for 2 roof repairs or restoration, the Hastings project, which we've heard about previously, and then some additional funding for the multi-use trail. And then one item that we know is coming, which is the library building improvements and design. So we don't have a cost for that yet. Some of these have to go back to the capital planning committee because they've changed or been updated since they had their final meeting. And so there will be another meeting prior to town meeting to get their support for some of these. But there's a mix of use of free cash, sewer and water retained earnings, golf retained earnings, and then there's some borrows. So you can see at the bottom that in fiscal '24, the free cash use is 1.3% of our general fund operating budget, which is within that goal. And then this is my last slide. So this is how will your property tax dollars be spent. So we're estimating a tax bill of $11,955, and then it breaks out in the different departments of the dollars and the percentage of the tax bill that goes to the different departments and services. So with that, I'm happy to answer any questions.
Great, thank you, Christy. Public hearing, joint meeting. I'll start with the select board, and then I'll turn it to the other committees for questions, but open up here if there's any questions or comments from the board. Again, knowing that a lot of the detail we'll be going through on our full day budget meeting with the Advisory Finance Committee on Thursday, but open it up for any comments or questions. Al, you want to kick us off?
I just have one question. With respect to the use of free cash to lower the tax rate, we're stepping back from that each year, so it's not a one-year jolt to the taxpayer.
Right.
This year's 450. How many more years are in the plan, and what would that look like?
This year, given the increase, we left it at 450. We haven't scheduled it out. Haven't scheduled it out like we have with OPEB.
Okay, thank you.
Patrick?
Yeah, just a question on the insurance. I guess educate me here a little bit. Is there any opportunity to extend contracts for longer terms than 1 year to get any cost savings that way, being that it's 19% of our budget?
No, I don't believe so.
Okay. I'll leave my other questions for Thursday.
Okay.
Shelby?
Yeah, so more of a comment, and hopefully we'll cover some of this at our meeting on Thursday. As we look at the shocking increase of electricity that is estimated, I think that we've got to sort of balance discussions as we think about our climate action plan goals and electrification of our community with that rising cost and what we can control and what we can't, and how we, kind of what is the long-term and near-term strategy, because that number is, I know it's frightening as individual taxpayers, and they're paying it in their residential rates,
Right.
And now they're going to see that increase on their tax bills. So I would just caution the board as we think about that. I know we have a sustainability coordinator being proposed as part of the budget, and I think that certainly this board has echoed support time and time again for the climate action plan, but I think we just need to really understand what those next key steps are toward implementation. So that's all I have for now, and certainly lots of questions for Thursday.
You hit one of my questions. I'm going to jump in before I go to you, Sean, but just on the electric piece, and again, tell me we can cover it Thursday, but I know we gave approval on the contract for you to sign as you're looking through it. What's the timing of, I guess, when we sign the contract, for how many years typically is the contract?
So we can't sign more than a 3-year agreement. Right now, we're seeing the advantageous rate at a 30-month contract.
Okay.
So they're proposing it for multiple variations of a 3-year contract.
Okay. So you actually answered my second question by telling me that we had a variation to look at, and I think
Yep.
that's smart to look at
Yep.
variations aside from locking us in.
Just a comment on that electric question. Just a note, I just noticed on this morning's news, they were talking about how the state legislature has asked DPU to go back and relook at the state's agreement with the electric companies to see if they can bring those rates down, because I think they were ranged near from like 65% increase all the way down to about a 30% increase depending on which provider it was. So it looks like the state is also looking to apply some pressure. So it's good that we waited a little while.
Yeah.
Sean?
Hey, Christie. So I think, one other thing, maybe we can talk about in a coming meeting is, I think the amount of the increase we're seeing this year, it looks like a component of that, again, will be residential assessments. And assessments are ballparked or estimated to increase again this year. I'm wondering if, at a future meeting, perhaps the assessor can come back and sort of talk to, the thoughts or rationale behind, I guess,
Sure.
assessments for the future year and sort of what that impact is on this amount.
Sure. Just to speak to that a little bit, I mean, we certainly didn't expect that it would go right back down in the coming year, so we knew it would be a multi-year sort of increase. The point that we want to make is that it wasn't as sort of extraordinary as it was last year, which is why we didn't hold that budget preview, which we only did last year, because we did see such a huge increase without adding anything to the budget. So again, that 896 is high, but it does also include a lot of things that were deferred due to last year's increase.
Can I ask a
Shelby?
clarifying question? Christie, on one of your slides that outlined the total budget, town salary and wages, expenses, the school budget, was toward the beginning. Yes, so, in the budget book, I just want to understand, I'm showing a 4.4% increase on expenses, and you said 12% of, so expenses are not on here?
So the 12% is fixed costs. Is that,
Okay,
I don't know
so,
what page you're looking at. in your
yeah, so
budget.
in the budget books, it's page 5, but,
Right, so the fixed costs went up.
so what's driving,
So the chart that you're looking at in your book
yep,
has salary and wages and town expenses broken out. This slide is the increase of the two together for under town budgets.
okay.
And then the fixed costs, what's driving that difference is as partly the landfill.
Okay.
Yeah, if you go back a few more pages and goes to the beginning of
You
your
know what, I
thing.
didn't note the combination of those two
Yeah,
versus
the town
how it's
department had,
presented.
the 9 versus the
Yeah.
1.5, but
My bad.
knowing that salary and wages that number will go up based on the union contracts if we
Yes.
are able to settle those. Great.
And my other question was, can you remind me, I don't recall that it was in the budget book, and I didn't go back to look, the fire chief recently applied for another SAFER grant for 4 firefighters. Was that started in '23, the application?
In fiscal 23,
Yeah.
I believe so. But we were not awarded that grant.
So we weren't awarded that, so,
And if you actually look at the communities that were awarded SAFER grants, you don't see a lot of communities that were awarded more than one.
okay. So we didn't get that, and so one is coming forward through the
Correct.
It's a regular.
recommendation of the finance
Yes.
committee.
Yep.
Thanks.
Thanks for that question, Shelby. Good. Anything else from the select board? I'm going to open up to the finance committee for any questions. Walter?
Do they want
Hi, Walter Leslie, Advisory Finance Committee. With the transfer of money from free cash to the stabilization fund, I think it might be useful to describe to people what is a stabilization fund, what it's used for, and what the differences is from having the money, say, in free cash versus in the stabilization fund.
So we definitely anticipate, this is a separate warrant article, so we anticipate talking about this in more detail when we're talking about the warrant article, but Free cash can be appropriated by town meeting by majority vote. Money can be appropriated from stabilization on a 2/3 vote. Stabilization is typically considered sort of a rainy day fund. Also, that money is invested, so it's just treated differently than free cash.
Invested meaning that we earn money on what's in
Correct.
there.
Yes,
So,
thank you.
Can they both be used for the same purposes?
Yes.
Walter, did that answer your question? Perfect. Yeah. Other question, I apologize, in the past, we've had folks sit up here, so if anybody does want to come up, I don't want to be exclusionary if any of the finance committee or that has questions, feel free to join us. Okay. We'll all be together again. Anything else from the finance committee or capital expenditures planning committee? Okay. If not, this is a public hearing, so now I'm going to open it up to public comment. Did I see a hand raised in the back? Yes, Mr. Linnane.
Thank you. Bill Linnane, 22 Smith Street. I don't think the public is aware of how much between you, the Finance Committee, and all the bodies concerned have improved in the last few years. And kudos to Christie and her team. If the residents would only spend time looking at the whole package, including all the details that are there per department, they would better understand what they're voting for. Not everybody can be available for Thursday or even tonight, but if they would spend time, then they would know where their monies are going. Yes, it's important for warrant items to spend time, and we need to spend time there, but it all goes back into, as the Finance Committee and especially Mr. Beretti has pointed out to us for a number of years, okay, that it adds to it. But I think studying that and going back into the documents, which she can tell you where it is, it's been stated by so many people, and reviewing what's on Westborough TV in your upcoming Thursday meeting, that instead of going and voting for, let's face it, school is one of the biggest ones, and voting for your pet project, that we would understand the guts of what's there and get better understanding of the detail that's there. There's a lot of fluff in parts of that, and I think it needs to be flushed out. That's only one. All the other departments are in the same boat. But kudos to you all, and especially Christie, for what's been done recently.
Thank you, Bill. Thank you. I think that's a good comment, and maybe look to the board too, but just continue reminders out there using social media or other means to remind people that these materials are out here. As you said, they've been out there since December, but to continually remind them, so hopefully, as Mr. Linnane said, that people can look at this and really study. I mean, the books, I mean, we have printed out copies just because we make a lot of notes in them, and I apologize for folks that want us to look online, but it's really easier for us here and for the Finance Committee. But there's a lot of materials, a lot of detail. You know, kudos to all the folks, town departments, whatever, to provide that detail, because when you read through it, it really brings to light what the budgets mean. So do encourage folks to do that, and we can take that away and make sure that we continually remind people as we progress towards town meeting to spend the time as they can looking at those books, but also watching the meetings that we have on Westborough TV. Shelby.
Ian, just to echo that comment and in response to Mr. Linnane, I would also add that our town manager and her staff are available to answer those questions, and that is part of the service. That is what you're paying for as a taxpayer. And so I would encourage the public to, after they've reviewed those, jot down their questions. There is no question that is, shouldn't be asked, and sometimes clarity eliminates a ton of confusion, misinformation, and quite frankly, a waste of time on social media. So go to the source, ask the question, and continue to ask those questions, because they are there to provide that customer service.
Thank you for that. Other public comments? Mr. Dunback.
Pete Dunbeck, 8 Wayside Road. On behalf of Sustainable Westborough, I'd like to convey our support for the proposal to hire the Sustainability Coordinator, Community Development Assistant, sorry. The position will provide some critically needed staff support for Sustainable Westborough as we work collaboratively with the town and the community to implement the Climate Action Plan. While developing the Climate Action Plan, we found from other similar communities that the best practice is to have a clearly defined staff person to focus on the energy needs and the climate programs among all the different stakeholders. There is a significant economic benefit to this position. He or she can develop and implement strategies to reduce energy use and can identify and pursue grant and other funding opportunities that leverage town investment and energy efficiency investments. Other communities have reported that these positions provide paybacks of over 4 times the cost of the position itself. While these investments save money on energy, they also, of course, support the established goals for greenhouse gas emissions reductions. As a measure of the opportunity, Westborough spends about $2.5 million in FY22 on energy, including electricity, gas, and transportation fuels. A 20% reduction in this, which is the green community goal, would have provided a recurring saving of $500,000, $500,000 a year recurring. So the investments savings are significant. We are in a transition period and that are causing a lot of volatility in the energy costs and associated costs, budget risks. These risks are not caused by local policies or the Westborough Climate Action Plan, but rather are caused by state and federal level changes, appropriate in my opinion, and as well as, of course, international conflicts. We're in a unique situation with the Ukraine war. The volatility and budget risk cannot be avoided locally by ignoring them. Our best course of action is to proactively use the best available information to make information decisions concerning the long-term needs and the finances of the town, as well as for the residents and the businesses. And now is the time to make a proactive, prudent decision to add this budget-positive position. And I thank you for the chance to speak to you.
Great. Thank you. Thank you very much. Are there anyone else that wishes to speak? Committees or the public? Okay. I think that's it. Christy, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Welcome everybody to join us on Thursday,
And Ian,
8:30 to 4 in the
No.
Great Hall.
you know I'm going to ask, right? This presentation, right?
We'll go on the,
It's already online.
Is already on the website,
It's headed there.
or headed there
But-
as we
Yeah.
speak. Okay, real time. Awesome, thank you.
perfect, thanks for that. Should have expected it, should have beat you to
I
it.
know, predictable.
Okay, motion to close the public hearing.
So moved.
Second?
Aye. Moved and seconded, all those in favor? 5-0. Yes, we're closing it for you since we were able to open it for you, so. I see no dissent, I see thumbs up. So, thank you everybody for that. Christy, thank you for putting that together into the finance team as well. And again, as I said, we look forward to Thursday's all-day meeting. Great, so.
We do.
It didn't
It is.
sound sincere.
Oh,
Sorry.
it's sincere.
Of course it's there.
I do.
Sincere. No, it is sincere. It is really an efficient use. We've seen that over the years, and while it's, for many of us in volunteer roles, it's taking time off from work. It really does help, kind of plan a full day of listening to this, spending the time. It definitely works for our town departments as well, and it has been an efficient use of our time. So I do appreciate the finance committee and the board for agreeing to continue to do this, and then also the town departments for taking time out of their work days to come and present to us.
Yeah, and I would just add quickly, I think one of the biggest benefits is the different groups get to hear each other's questions. And so, we hear the questions, the Advisory Finance Committee asks, they hear our questions, and they're all answered together by each department rather than the same questions being asked multiple times. So it is an efficient day.
Thank you, Sean.
Thank you. Yep.
Okay, moving forward on the agenda, as I mentioned earlier, item 5, and apologies for this, the safety net program presentation, which was in our packet. We're postponing that to the next meeting due to the police department not being able to be here tonight. So, yeah, we can't do that till 7:15.
Do you want me to do the goals update?
Yep.
Okay.
Sure, so let's go to we're gonna go to item 11, which is Town Manager Select Board Goals Update.
So this is an update for the second quarter of the fiscal year. So going first through the select board goals, the sale of the Regal Cinema. The Regal Cinema bid was awarded on November 2nd of 23, and we're working through that process. For lease, the second goal was to deal with leases. So there's a tower lease, which we thought might come due this year, but actually it's 2025, so we were able to move that forward. And then we're going to talk more tonight about the country club lease, but we did receive the building needs assessment that was contracted by the DPW, was a warrant article at a previous town meeting. So we'll talk more tonight about next steps for that building. The American Rescue Plan fund allocation, you've actually talked through this at several meetings. And then, as I mentioned in my presentation, as of right now, we have $193,000 remaining. One of the items at the first quarter update was the MassWorks. We weren't sure if that was going to move forward. We did receive that grant, so that $250,000 will be used. And we still are working through the splash pad or use of ARPA money by the Recreation Department, which will come to you at a future time. The evaluation of waste programs, I also just mentioned. So that committee is meeting multiple times a month, really working toward that October 23 target. The communication education related to taxation, we considered that complete at the end of Q1. And then the Economic Development Forum we held on November 2nd, where our EDC coordinator came in and discussed the EDC work as it relates to the weaknesses that were identified in the 2013 Economic Development Self-Assessment. He also talked about goals and initiatives as they relate to current planning processes, including the local rapid recovery plan. And there was discussion about the public engagement involved in both that local rapid recovery and then also the master plan, which points to economic development as really setting up goals for the Economic Development Committee going forward. The senior needs assessment is ongoing, and that is the town manager goal. But the assistant town manager is really the lead on that project. And so we've completed surveys, and then, or we are completing received all the surveys, and then they're doing analysis, which we hope to have a completed draft by the end of February 2023. There were also multiple focus groups that were held. The Citizen Leadership Academy, we're working through a syllabus that we can offer to staff for comment, and then a final draft will be presented to the board after town meeting. And then that's similar to the strategic plan update process. Owen in our office has been great pulling together what other towns do, and it's been really helpful to understand how they can do that process internally. Because initially we had talked about hiring a consultant, but we feel like looking at what other towns are accomplishing, we're probably able to do that internally. But we'll bring that forward to the board for your consideration. The B-Vault project implementation, we did present the implementation plan to you in the fall, and at this point we've presented a capital plan request to the capital planning committee. And then we're moving towards a grant, which we'll talk about later tonight, for 25% design of Section 2 of the B-Waltz, understanding that Section 1 is all part of that Otis Street Corridor project, which is being funded through state grants. And then tax classification education, again, was also a goal of mine and staff, and that was considered complete. And then land prioritization, we're continuing to review that related to open space and recreation. You met our new conservation director earlier tonight. She actually has great experience related to land management, and so probably tapping into that with her to understand how we might move this forward.
Great, any questions? Thank you for the update.
Sure.
Definitely making progress, which is on everything, which is great. Let's move to easements. Do you want to do easements on West Park, or?
Sure. So these are, I can pull up the, these are the easements that are related to that first MassWorks grant project on West Park Drive. So the request for easements is a drainage easement, there's a temporary construction easement, and then also a trail easement. We've been working through these, myself, the town planner, DPW, with town council and folks from the property owners for over a year, and we got very close, and so those are the documents that you have in your packet. We did have a couple more concerns that were raised by the town engineer and the assistant DPW director. I think most of them non-substantive, but just making sure that the town is able to do the things that we need to do within those easements. So we do have final drafts of those easements, which I just got at the end of the day, so I don't have them ready for you. At this point, in talking to our public works director, if the board is comfortable, I would be seeking a vote to approve them subject to satisfaction by the DPW. And then we could work out those remaining items if there are any on the final versions.
Great. Questions? This is great. I mean, this has been a long process, as we know, through the whole thing. So I guess the motion is a little bit different than what we have in here, since we just got the town council's final comments, or really so it's basically, will be to accept.
Sorry, I'm just pulling it up.
I can make the motion.
Okay, you got it.
So move pursuant to Article 15 of the 2021 Annual Town Meeting to accept the grant of trail easement, temporary construction easement, and drainage easement for West Park Drive, subject to final review and acceptance by DPW.
Perfect. Thank you.
Seconded.
Okay, moved and seconded. Questions or comments?
Great.
Great, thank you. All those in
you.
favor? It's 5-0, 5 being present.
Too efficient.
Trying to go. Do you think we can hit the letter of support for Mass Trails grant application too?
Sure.
Which is item 13.
So as I mentioned, there's a group of us that are working on the BWALT implementation. Myself, some staff, Shelby as a rep from the select board or liaison to the Active Transportation and Safety Committee, and then a few folks from that committee. And so we're pursuing a Mass Trails grant. The Mass Trails grant application is due on February 1st. And thank you to Ellen Google and Don Byrne for all the work that they're doing to get that together. And so we did receive a quote for 25% design for the second section of the BWALTs, and that is $550,000. So for the Mass Trails grant, we would be applying for an amount up to that $550,000, understanding that the town has to provide a 20% match. So there's an article, this is something that has to go back to the capital planning committee, but for that $110,000 that the town would need to support the match, assuming that we get awarded. So we would find out in July if we get awarded. We're asking town meeting now in anticipation of that award, so that we can begin immediately in terms of that 25% design.
This would be a free cash, back to capital expenditure for
Right,
free cash.
it has to go back to capital,
Yep.
yep.
And the only part, really, I know the board is aware, this is the second, section 2, we've identified it as in the project, which connects to section 1, which really starts kind of that Otis Street corridor project, which is working its way through, engineering, design, and ultimately construction.
Want to make a motion?
Sure. I'll move to authorize the chair to sign a letter of support for the Mass Trails Grant in support of the BWALT.
Second?
A second, any questions or comments?
One question. Section 2 is approximately what percentage of the entire trail? Could refresh my memory.
He wants it by feet, you know.
No, just, is it 5%? Is it 25%? Just roughly?
No, so there's 6 sections.
6 sections?
It's Otis to Milk Street. So I
Okay.
don't know.
Okay,
What
so
the
it's a fairly
percentage
good
is.
This is
distance.
inclusive of the bridge and that
It's
we've
some of
talked
the
about
most
before.
complex.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's complex because of salamanders and,
Actually,
No,
no,
that's
that's
the next
beyond.
one?
That's the
Okay.
next one.
That's beyond, and hopefully
So
that's
this is-
taken care of, but
hopefully
the,
it's- right, so-
it does involve the, Assabet and lots of wetlands and,
Okay.
Around the treatment plant.
Yeah.
That's true.
been-
Okay,
the
thank you.
fencing and
So
that.
just as a reminder for folks, this is just for design, and so so we would be working on just design. So I think that that's important because there are obviously other people who would be part of the conversation if we're talking about construction.
Thank you for the question. Anything else? Okay, all those in favor? It's 5-0, 5 being present. I say we have 3 more minutes. Let's go to meeting minutes. December 27th, 2022 meeting minutes. It was in our package.
make a motion to approve the meeting minutes of December 27, 2022.
second?
Okay, moved and seconded. Any comments or questions or revisions? Okay, if not, all those in favor? It's 5-0, 5 being present. The next set is our January 10th, 2023 minutes. May I have a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve those minutes.
Second?
Okay, moved and seconded. Any comments, corrections, questions? All those in favor? It's 5-0, 5 being present. Sealer, as always, thank you for those. Keeping us up to date, which is great.
Town manager report.
Yeah, we're gonna go real quick through town manager's report?
Sure.
You have to go real quick.
I was gonna say, take your time.
Okay, so the budget summit, as we mentioned, is Thursday, January 26th, it's 8:30 to 4 in the Great Hall. We've had one new hire that we wanted to mention, which is our Veterans Director. The Central Massachusetts Veterans Service District has hired Jeffrey Farrell to fill the vacant position of District Director, and he will begin serving the member communities of Westborough, Grafton, Shrewsbury, and Northborough in early February. He has 12 years of military service, initially serving in the United States Marine Corps and then continuing his service in the Massachusetts Army National Guard. He has also worked as an athletic trainer and holds an undergraduate degree in physical education and athletic training and a master's degree in sports management, and so we'll bring him to a board meeting to introduce him to all of you. The Board of Health update, as we mentioned before, we did have a meeting with Waste Connections on January 11th, and that's when we were informed that we would be ending public access to the transfer station effective July 1st, 2024. So thank you to Mr. Harvey, who met with us and giving us that notice so we can work through what's coming next. Council on Aging, so they've seen an increase in daily ridership on the minibuses, including residents from the Del Webb apartments. Currently, the SMOC Fuel Assistance Program is running very far behind in their certification. Many of the applicants that were sent in November and recertifications that were mailed have not been processed yet. Electric and gas cannot be shut off during the winter months, but those depending on oil deliveries are at a disadvantage for those protections. The regional senior center directors have decided to make calls to our state legislatures to see if they can have some impact on the situation. Another area of concern is the end of the COVID-19 enhanced funding for SNAP benefits that will stop on March 3rd. Many of our seniors have come to depend on this additional funding that they have had for almost 3 years. Our executive director will be attending a Zoom meeting on January 31st with the state to find out what the new provisions and exclusions will be for the program. One of the minibuses was in an accident. And so they're working through that. The AARP funding, Foundation Tax Aid Program will be available at the Senior Center on Fridays during February and March to help seniors with their state and federal income tax returns. This is a free service for seniors to do simple tax returns. They're also looking to restart the Memory Cafe early this spring. Applications are coming in for the Senior Veteran Property Tax Work Program, and the deadline for those applications is February 3rd. In the Finance Department, the following grants were received in November and December. So DPW, the Otis Street Construction Project, the $2 million. Also for the Otis Street Construction Project through the Complete Streets Program is $500,000. Economic Development, the pop-up incubators in Westborough and Acton. The Fire Department, the MEMA grants, and then police received a body-worn camera grant. We've also awarded a contract for the National Water Main Cleaning Company for sewer interceptor rehab project. The treasurer collector, the third quarter real estate and personal property bills are due on February 1st. The third quarter water and sewer bills are due on February 17th. At the last meeting, the select board appointed Linda Smith to the position of treasurer collector, and so she'll take over that position on February 6th. The town and school employees' W-2s will be issued in the next week and are due out by January 31st. The assessor's office is busy with abatements, which must be postmarked no later than February 1st of 23. The office is conducting its annual personal property discovery inspections of commercial and industrial property, as well as the receipt and processing of personal property forms of list that are due on March 1st. The income and expense request mailings have gone out. In the recreation department, they started to work on the cricket pitch at Chauncey Fields, so it should be open later this year. The spring and summer program brochure will be out in a couple of weeks with registration opening on February 6th. And then in the town clerk's office, they're in the process of administering and collecting nomination papers for the annual election to be held on March 14th, 2023. There's 2 seats available, the trustees of the public library and trustees of Soldiers Memorial. Nomination papers must be returned or had to have been returned to the town clerk's office by 5 o'clock today. All current elected officials have until January 20th to return their end of year 2022 campaign finance reports to the town clerk's office.
Christy, just, I think that there's a correction there to 2 seats being available for trustees of public library. I believe that there are 3 seats, a 3-year term and 2 3-year terms and 1 1-year term, if I'm not mistaken.
Let me just look at the warrant.
The 1-year term was because of a resignation.
Right. Just for the public's.
I didn't read 3-year term, I'm sorry. So there's 2 seats available for 3-year terms for the library board of trustees.
And 1 1-year.
Okay.
Yeah, but that wasn't open. Someone pulled, I think these are ones that no one had pulled papers for, maybe?
No.
Is that right?
Yes.
Everything?
Yeah.
Okay.
I just, in case it was a typo or something, I just wanted to make sure that the public, I mean, again,
I
all
think it's-
papers were due in today, so anyone that didn't provide signatures can always run as a writing candidate, but,
Yes.
so
Okay.
it's kind of a non-issue now, I guess. Anyway.
Thanks.
Great.
And there are other elections, school committee, select board, et cetera, so, yeah.
Okay, thank you, Christy. Being past 7:15, we will reopen or continue the Courtyard Marriott and Keeper Lodging House permit hearing. Yes.
Yeah, he's here.
Yep, I think in the back there. Chrissy, you want to kick this off with the updates, please?
Yeah. So we met last time regarding the continued work of the Courtyard Marriott to complete their certificate of inspection. We asked them to come back to give a status report. At the time, the board did allow them to retain their innkeeper license. You have in your packet a recommendation from the Assistant Building Commissioner that the board continue to allow them to retain their 2023 innkeeper license, understanding that they're moving forward. I did check with the fire chief also to make sure that he concurred with that recommendation, and he does.
Great. Thank you. Welcome back. Sorry to make you wait a little bit here, but just if reintroduce yourself if you don't mind, and also just to give any updates from your side, if you like.
Christopher Salo, General Manager of the Courtyard. Speaking with Encore, who's now taking over our fire protection. We've completed the fire extinguishers. We have our sprinkler inspection being done Thursday. And then a recent email was just sent out this evening to confirm about the fire hydrant being taken care of. But everything else, we're up to code.
Perfect. Thank you for your work on that and your help. I know it was new to you, so not a lot, but thank you to you for working through that. Thank you also to our town departments for working with you. I think it sounds like their recommendation is that everything is moving forward. They appreciate that, and so we have the recommendation in front of us, but I open up to the board for questions or comments.
Good, things are moving forward.
Would you like a motion?
I don't know
So,
that.
so,
Do we not-
so the motion in your, are you going to do a different motion? Okay, so the motion in your packet would be if the board was interested in suspending the license. It sounds like you're interested in taking the recommendation. I think we asked you back to give an update, but if the board doesn't feel that they need to see you again, then you could just issue, or you don't have to take an action because they already have the license. So.
Okay.
And if, I would just ask that we would just get a final closeout.
Yep.
Through
Yep.
you.
Yep.
That'd be
Great.
Same here.
So basically, I think it's, by default here that we're in concurrence with the recommendations from the Assistant Building Commissioner and the Fire Chief to move forward. So thank you for that. You don't need to come back unless we hear that you have to come back. So hopefully not for you and for us as well, so.
Come back just to see you.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Bring cookies next time. Thank you very much. Best of luck, and
Thank
thanks
you.
again for working with us.
Appreciate it,
Thank
guys.
you.
Thank you.
Okay, have a good night.
Okay.
Close the hearing?
I don't know if it was
It
wasn't
was
a,
a public hearing.
was it a public hearing?
Mhm. Yeah,
Okay.
you continued it from last time.
Anybody here in the public that wants to speak? Before we close the hearing? Okay.
I move to close the public hearing for the Courtyard Marriott Innkeeper Lodging House permit.
Seconded.
Hey, all those in favor? 5-0, 5 being present. Okay, next we're gonna move to item 6, which is the Westborough Country Club property. Christie?
So as I mentioned, the town was in receipt of the building assessment. This was funding that was approved at a recent town meeting. We were able to actually contract with the same company that was working on the previous insurance claim to complete the assessment. That assessment's in your packet. It's very detailed in terms of any concerns related to the country club building. I did send the board a memo, just sort of highlighting some of the issues that were addressed. So just to go to that memo, the scope of this service was a structural engineering assessment, mechanical, electrical, fire protection assessment, general building assessment, and then they were going to include costs of a 10-year cost of use assessment or estimation, and do some environmental assessment. So, but it did not include estimated costs or recommendations for restructuring the building to improve current functionality. So it really just looked at the building as it currently exists. One of the notes that they made was that this building really was a residential home that was converted to what we have today, which is the pro shop and the restaurant. And so that creates its own complications. Obviously, that was done several years ago. So currently, we have the lease agreement with Civic Kitchen that expires in March. And so one of the things that we've been talking about is what our next step is in terms of moving forward with an RFP for a lease. At this time, based on the results of the report and sort of the extensive needs of the renovation, the recommendation is to not move forward at this point with pursuing a subsequent lease. The total cost for repair, which is noted in this document, is just under $800,000 just for repair, but that's not inclusive of all necessary repairs and upgrades. For example, it doesn't include the sprinkler system being added. And so when staff received the report, we did meet to discuss it. And at this time, we would recommend to the board that we set up a committee to look at what to do with this building moving forwards. This would be function similarly to any other building committee, really looking at the town's assets, how we expect that it could be used in the future, and then really understanding what sort of capital investment the town is interested in making.
Can you speak to the more immediate need as the snow melts of the golf course and the pro shop?
So we do feel that we could continue to use the pro shop. Thank you for that. So the pro shop at this time, we can continue to use it as we currently do for the pro shop. The recreation director and our golf pro have already started looking into options for providing food trucks or other means of getting food service during the summer, and so that's certainly an option as we start to look at how we want to move forward with the building. But definitely keeping the golf club open. We're not recommending that shut down in any way.
Ian?
Yes.
Yeah, just a question. It mentions, and total transparency here, I did not, a lot of information in the back.
There's a lot, yeah.
So I only had time to really skip to the summary, and I will do due diligence and go back and read it. But in just going to that summary section, it mentions at the very top, you just went over all of the different assessments that were done. But in the summary section on page 31, it talks about EFI recommends that licensed electricians evaluate the current electrical system. It seems a little different than some of the other items that they outlined as deficiencies in the property. This to me is an item that actually says, hey, it needs to be done. Is that going to be done before, or is that information that could be provided or be done and provided to that committee if we so choose to stand up that committee? Because they've just done, it seems like a cursory review of electrical, whereas
Right.
they're really looking for an electrician to come in and say, what are the actual issues, if any, in the electrical system?
Currently there's no funding for any of this work, and so we would really want to look to a committee to see what they thought. Is it repair and renovation? What's sort of the future use of this property? So I think we want to make sure that the committee is able to put forward a recommendation sort of more comprehensively before we spend money on that.
Yeah, I was looking at that one, kind of thinking that would be kind of some information that committee would want in order to better form their decisions. So
Yeah, so I think it would be helpful once you form the committee to have them review the report and
yeah,
identify that type of
fair enough.
information. Yeah.
Yep, thank you.
Yeah, just it's a lot in there, and actually was hoping you'd read through it because you're a better builder than I know that I am here. And
You want my opinion?
yeah, well, yeah,
No, I'll refrain.
not at this time. But I
Yes,
do
I
think
do.
it's I'll be I will do my Earl story, be brutally honest. I actually I was disappointed. I think it's to see the report, I guess, maybe not overly surprised by some of it in there, but I guess the disappointing piece is, we've been leasing out restaurants there for 50 years now, or close to 50 years. I know it's an asset to the town from both the golf, but also the restaurant aspect to it. people as residents appreciated that and enjoyed it. So the disappointing part is, I agree with the staff's assessment here, is that we shouldn't renew the lease now based on what we've seen there, and appointing a committee makes total sense. It's just, it's disappointing, and it's one of those things, as we've had the past history there as a restaurant, that we've had good times and we've had bad times, and I think we had a successful lessee that was running it. It was something that I know personally had enjoyed it myself, and my family did, but also I know that a lot of residents and non-residents and golfers had appreciated that. So that's that kind of disappointing stuff when you have a business that's running and thriving to basically have to, I'm not even giving them the opportunity to rebid. So, but in reading what I could read and understand, I mean, there's a lot of deficiencies there based on the oldness of the original building, the various additions that have been added onto it over time, et cetera. So I think based on the report we got, which was authorized and approved by town meeting, so the town had asked for that, I think the recommendation from the staff, to me, are the right recommendations for us to move forward. My hope would be that we could do this quickly, as quickly as we can, just to keep the ball moving here, because I do think it's, coming to some sort of decision sooner than later would be beneficial to the town.
Just one comment, because it was out of scope for this assessment, but is that if we form a committee and they move forward, this report makes it very clear that it's a very serious consideration to replace rather than repair and renovate. And so the one, aside from the structure of the building and the costs involved in each option and all the deficiencies right now and potential use, the additional mix is, it'd be good to understand if that building has any historic value that would warrant some level of preservation work. So, I don't know the answer to that, but
Nope,
it should
that's a
be-
good point.
It just should be a consideration as this gets deliberated.
Yeah. And one thing that popped in my mind too, just to throw it out there, is, so I don't forget about it since I'm getting old, but as we've done in the past, is if there is renovation or tear down, rebuild, or whatever is decided, if it is some sort of construction process, if there is a way that we can, or that committee, along with the town, work on a public-private partnership of ways that to do that, I think would be beneficial. If it is going to be, returning it to a restaurant, we've got a lot of really good people on staff, but I don't know that we have, restaurateurs on staff. It'd be good to, have help there or with other things. So, and it might be beneficial from a cost perspective as well if we have that public-private partnership. It may allow us to do things differently than building a true municipal building like a fire department, et cetera. So I throw that out there just for consideration, along with that historical piece too, of things to think about as we're going through the process. Other comments, or John?
Yeah, I mean, the report is, there was a tremendous amount of detail in there, and, the final estimates on the cost of the project were, upwards towards $1 million for the repair, rounding up. And certainly significant. I think it does make a lot of sense. I think understanding the full history of the building was great, that it was a home that, it looks like a home, but I hadn't considered that, it'd just been bought by and then converted. So there's a lot of history there. I think one of the things for me as we go forward is it's utilized by the country club, but it's a town-owned building. And so if there is a decision to put a significant amount of money into repairing this building or a new building, then how do we allocate that cost sort of across the town? Does the golf course itself somehow absorb a portion of that through the enterprise fund? And then knowing that if a restaurant is included, that the general public has access to. So a lot of those things in terms of how would this be handled financially, I think will come out after this committee makes its decisions on what is necessary. But a lot more to come there, but I am also supportive of this. Otherwise, we're just sort of kicking this can down the road because clearly there's a lot of work needed to be done on this building.
Yeah, and to that point, once we understand what the next steps are in terms of the actual building, then we can understand funding sources. It's true that right now the lease payment for the country club, for the restaurant goes into our building maintenance revolving account because it is treated as a town building. There's opportunity, depending on what type of building or what type of renovation we're doing, to have those discussions. Also, future lease payments could be put out to bid with a minimum to cover debt costs.
Yeah, one thing, and Shelby, I know you wanted to get in there first, just because I probably should have said it clearly, just so folks listening, is in reading the report, which I believe is public information now, so it could be put out for folks to see, but it's pretty evident that, trying to go out, because I was trying to figure ways to go out to lease and try to continue money on that, it doesn't make any sense there's just way too much in that report that for us and risk associated with it. There's no way that we as a board could make the decision to not pay attention to what was there and try to go out and lease that property for an ongoing restaurant at this point in the shape that it's in as outlined in that report, or I shouldn't say outlined, detailed in that report. So,
And to add to that just briefly, and to what Sean said in regards to the $1 million, that's just to fix problems. That's not any improvements on the structure, to make it work, the flow of the building work any better or any of that. It's just fixing really important problems to that building. So there's a lot going on there.
sorry about that, Shelby. I know you had.
Nope.
Please go ahead.
All good discussion. The conversation took away a few of my questions. I would, so I support a lot of what the board has said here. My concern in moving forward with a committee that is solely focused on sort of this building ties back to a conversation we had I think it was 1 or 2 board meetings ago where I had suggested that we kind of take a broader look at the buildings and assets that we have and think about kind of what do we need as a community going forward. This ties a little bit into, Sean, I think, where I thought you were going, but just in terms of the community's needs and that building presently, although we did have a restaurant there, so general public had access, it was really just for a relatively small cohort of members who golf. And so at a prior meeting, I had asked that we consider looking at all of our kind of town assets in a much bigger perspective, the Harvey building, this building, and others, to say, what do we need? We've had this long-going, hanging out there discussion about, or thought about a community building, and I'm not suggesting it go there, there's not enough land there, but I don't know that we should just kind of channel in that this should be the new pro shop and that's what it's going to be and it's all golf related and maybe it's a restaurant. I think we need to think a little bit more broadly about its use in the context that it's a town asset. So that's my only concern, is that if we go down the path of a country club, kind of golf club focus, that's going to be the sole driver of the objective of the committee. So we might address that through the constitution of the committee that looks at it, so that we have kind of broader representation. Or we the board sets a mission and kind of a vision or scope, I guess. So that would be my concern.
That is, I mean, I didn't go through all the recommendations, but the first sort of task for the committee would be to recommend whether or not the town should consider significant capital investment in this building. I know that doesn't fully speak to what you were saying. This really initiated from the board's goal a couple of years ago to review town buildings and really the buildings that are underutilized or that we view as maybe underutilized. So we did also receive an assessment of the Harvey building. The reason that that this one's before you first is because of the lease and the need to address that. But so we do have the Harvey building assessment as well. I think we just have to sort of think about, a couple years ago, several years ago maybe now, we had a committee that really tried to understand the golf club as a town asset. Is it something do we sort of want to be in that business? And their ultimate recommendation was yes. And I think we made a lot of changes to make it very successful. And to the point that it's now, again, fully funded by the enterprise fund. So, interesting conversation. I'm not really saying that we shouldn't do that. I just, I do think it's just part of the discussion, I guess. I do think that, at your next meeting, if we want to move forward with this, I would probably provide you a recommendation of what the composition of that committee might look like. You could certainly give it a broader name if you think that makes sense. Understanding also that one of my goals is to provide back to you sort of a timing or scheduling of some of these larger projects.
So just as a follow-up, I think that, so fully supportive and very proud of the work that the town has done to really revitalize and re-energize. We have a full-time staff member, part of the recreation department, and the work that's being done over there. Membership is up, visitor fees are up, all positive. So I want to continue to support that. And so certainly, not suggesting that, and I know you know this, or the board knows this, that, that operation should operate out of like a tent and the building should be used for something else. But I think about it like we're in the winter right now. So what if we had a building that had more, I don't know, meeting space, or, there was a cultural element to it, or I don't know.
Yep.
So I would just,
And there have been conversations, from Recreation Commission, the Rec Department, and even the, before it was disbanded and merged in, the Golf Club Operating Committee, about how to think about winter sports, an ice rink or
Cross-country.
Cross-country skiing and snowshoeing, support for that, and what, facility you need is like warming hot
Right,
cocoa,
right.
Those types of things. So I think the scope of the committee can be such to consider, a broader use, with the understanding that land, however, is predominantly recreation.
Right.
And that was part of the staff discussion, was if you were to create a building from scratch, some sort of like meeting room, function room, that could definitely support the golf course, but would absolutely support other organizations in town. So all I think, part of the conversation, and I think to your point, it's really about the composition of the committee, making sure that we're kind of thinking outside of what we currently have.
Yeah, and I think the charter, Shelby, what you said makes sense. I think we should move forward. That group should think about the other properties. We're gonna see that stuff coming in, but broaden their charge to think outside, because I think all these things that I've heard are all great ideas. I think one thing that I was really surprised looking at the report is that, well, I know there's a lot of things going on. I didn't realize currently the amount of square foot. We had close to 8,000, 7,400, 7,600, some number, over 7,000, less than 8,000, so in there. Just a lot of space.
Yeah.
And really underutilized. And when you look at it, the second floor of the old house was used for offices and some other stuff for the restaurant, but I call that kind of wasted space. Not efficient use, but if you were to go and put the same amount of square footage, just think of, that's a lot of space that you could do with that. So I'm supportive of everything that was said here. I think it should be a broad use, and I'm not personally, I'm not wed on it being a restaurant or whatever. I think it should be much broader and it could be that we just want open space and a small facility for the golf, I don't know.
Yeah,
So I think,
yeah.
but I think your point, so maybe what we do is, I'll throw an idea out there, but others can debate that. We ask Christie to think about that. We provide comments of thinking about kind of what the charter for that group should be too. And suggestions on membership, et cetera, if we have that. And then if we're ready by the next meeting to bring that forward, if we don't think we're ready, we can put it on a future one. But I think us providing to Christie, each of us individually providing to Christie thoughts on that, I think would be helpful.
Just as a clarification, I'm not suggesting we use some other study. We have plenty of studies, right? We have our strategic plan we're still working on. We have our master plan implementation committee underway, and lots of ideas from there, et cetera, et cetera. So I think we have plenty of information to inform us as to kind of the committee's the community's wants and needs. And to Christie's point, the country club operating committee or former did a ton of work to kind of get us. So I think the information's there. It's as we've discussed. So I think that's a great, whether it's for next meeting or the following, that's great.
Anything further?
I would just say CCBC rolls off the tongue, so I'm okay with the name of it, Joe.
But I think there is consensus here that we're not going out with an RFP, so we don't need a motion here as a board, but that, and I think I think it sounds like there was some folks knew that might happen here in town because there was questions about why we hadn't gone out with an RFP yet, but I think officially now we're all saying as a board, unless someone thinks differently, that we are not moving forward at this time with an RFP on that building. But as was said, the golf club operations, pro shop, whatever, moving forward, preparing for the year, that is still in process and will maintain
In the RFP you're referring to specifically is for
the restaurant.
Yeah, for someone to utilize the restaurant.
Correct.
Right. Not to redo the building.
Correct. That was the RFP. As we know, the RFP for the restaurant expired March 1st. The Civic had asked for a early release to hopefully, the hope was to get the insurance work done that needed to be done, but that coincided with this report, which just highlighted to us that it doesn't make sense for us to look to enter into a new lease as of that March 1st date. Great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, next, item 7 on our agenda, intermunicipal agreement for the regional dispatch center.
So I had provided the board last week with a draft of the intermunicipal agreement that was based on the state template that was part of our feasibility study. One of the towns had provided a lot of comment, and so I did provide you in your packet, and also via email, an updated draft or clean version of that IMA. It continues to have governance that includes a board of directors, which would be made up of the managers in each of the each of the communities, a finance advisory subcommittee, an operations committee, and then there would be an executive director that would run the district. So this is a separate district. It's not hosted by a particular community. We would pay an assessment to that district. Just looking through to see if there's a lot of cleanup of language. I think Ian and I have been meeting with the other board chairs from the other communities and their managers, and I think we've gotten to a point where we feel like we're getting very close. We know that there are other communities that are also considering this IMA tonight, and the expectation is that all of the communities will have signed the IMA by your next meeting, so the 14th, understanding that the grant is due on March 2nd. So there's no request for a vote this evening. I think we just want to understand, I think Ian and I want to understand what questions or concerns you might have related to the current version of the document so that we can address those with the group of communities.
Yeah, and just one thing to add, so we did as Christie said, we have been meeting with the board chairs and the town managers, administrators. We did do a site tour as well of the facility up on Otis Street and the Hockomock Pond property, which I think was valuable to the other communities when they saw that. We went through this draft agreement the last time. This has the combined comments from all the communities. I would say that there is one additional one that we're waiting for. I don't know if I think they said by tomorrow, Southborough's has gone back to their council and about a provision there right now. They had some concerns right now about what would happen if there was a large capital project that needed to, come back to communities, how that would work. And they have experience and unfortunate litigation experience related to their regional school district, Algonquin, out of Southborough. So that's where the chair had brought it up. So they were looking at asked council to look at other agreements to see how that might be addressed. So that's the one item that out of that meeting that would be a potential addition to this based on council's thoughts around that, which I think we all kind of shook our heads, said that makes sense to include that in there, and benefit of having other communities in that have gone through some of these regional things before. So, but besides that, I think it's been a really strong effort by each of the communities. And I think at this point, there was some questions as to whether all four, but right now it feels like all four communities are still very interested in moving this forward.
Yep. I should just add to that on January 30th, our conservation director and Chief Purcell and I are going to be meeting with representatives from the EPA, DEP, and BEZR to talk about this project and the use of that property for this purpose.
Right. Yes, Shelley.
Yep. So I continue to be very supportive of this. I would just have questions, certainly understanding this would not be spelled out in the IMA, but I would be interested in, as the district is formed, kind of the data and the type of reports that a select board of the town would receive around service level metrics, data. We've had the benefit through our public safety officials of having great reports on a regular basis, and when we sort of need additional information, we have great access to those, and as well as even sort of support from our chiefs if additional information is needed or a different maybe type of metric. So I would be interested in understanding the data that comes out of a regional center such as this. So I just put that out there. I know our chief is sitting in the office, in the audience, excuse me. So I know that's a future request. The other piece that I would add is that being that the proposed rec is on town land, I would be certainly interested in kind of that next step, which is kind of what would the agreement be like with the town for the use of the land? Is it a lease agreement? What are the terms of those lease? What is the term of the lease? What is the benefit to the town for use of that property? And what are the controls and conditions of that land use? As the board is well aware, we want to utilize that property for open space and recreation and who knows what else, but that sort of seems to be where at least the near-term use is. And so understanding how these two components come together, I think, is important. And again, I don't know if that's spelled out in the IMA or I'm not sure. And Christine and I had a conversation about this before this meeting, so.
Yeah, just if I can add to that, Ian, just
Yep,
a
please.
thought that come to mind also. I don't know if, as part of this project, I don't remember seeing it. Has there been any, is there a need for a traffic study? That's in a major intersection. There's a lot of work going down in that area with Amazon and obviously the Otis Street corridor piece. With a building of that size and the potential for the number of employees coming in and out of that facility, I'm just curious as to if there's any need to do any sort of planning assessment or understanding.
So I certainly don't want to speak for on the details of it, but the number of employees going in and out is actually
Very
pretty
small.
small.
It was small, right.
It's pretty
Less than
small.
It's a handful.
It's 10, okay.
Yeah.
You know, but it's a good question, you know.
Just the
being that-
current driveway is very close to that
To that
intersection.
corner, right.
So, should it be repositioned elsewhere or, around the corner? That kind of stuff. I mean,
Yeah.
the volume's probably not high, but
No, it's a good
just
question.
understand where that curb cut needs to be.
And given the limitations of the brown, the former.
Exactly.
That's the problem with kind of going the side, so yeah.
But it's a good question.
Yep. I was just trying to look through here, and I didn't find here, but Shelby, I think you raised some good points. A couple of things there is that in terms of the reporting with the various committees, so the town manager, finance, staff member, and then the operations, which was basically the fire chief and the police chief. So they will all be, so we will have community, professionals, representation, all these things. There was in here too that there's kind of requirements for them to report to each select
Right.
board.
Right.
And I think that, our piece, which isn't in here, but will be, I think you're right, that to go back and say, this is the type of reporting that we want to see, and I'm sure going through town manager, finance, and our chiefs, we can ensure that we get the proper
Well, and this is,
reporting and information that we want out of that.
right, and this is not the first rec that's been done, so I'm sure
Correct.
that there's a protocol and a requirement. This is obviously a state supported initiative, so I'm sure that infrastructure is in place, but there is an element of kind of feeling like you're losing a little bit of control, but yet there are huge benefits. So kind of, we do have that representation, which is great on those various committees or boards. But I just want to make sure that we don't lose sight of kind of our accountability to the public. That's all.
Yeah, I guess, and you made me think as well, one of the things that I agree with Shelby, that this is a huge benefit to the community, but one of the things I don't want to lose, if this moves forward, is that community piece of it, meaning, we've got a dispatch center which is located in our fire department today, where there's a direct communication relationship, right, between those dispatchers and the fire department and even the police department. We move this out of that facility, it goes into this larger facility with more people around the region, covering a much larger region. I guess my ask is, it doesn't have to, it's not in the contract or anything like that, but something to consider is, how do we make sure that there's a, for lack of a better word, bond between the dispatchers and our fire and police department, so that we don't lose that connectivity. For example, I'm sure our dispatchers currently understand like where Milk Street is versus where Fisher Street is, right? How do we make sure that connectivity and that knowledge still exists when their region is much larger across many towns, and they're probably the dispatchers might even be coming from other areas. So just something to put out there.
I don't know if the chief wants to speak to that, but I do know that when we had that larger meeting with the state, just talking about recs, and I know that you know this, but just for the public, like, this is a very common type of arrangement all over the country.
Mm-hmm.
We're actually unique in that each community has set up their own dispatch center, and so it's really, it might not be someone who sort of drives those same streets every day, but definitely has that familiarity in terms of being able to provide that service. So in terms of sort of the bond or the relationship, I mean, that's really where that operations committee comes in.
Yeah, right. Maybe that's what it's the training. Like, how do we make sure that they're kind of familiarized with Westborough? So I think you understand where I was.
Yeah, and I think, I am fully confident that you'll have that again through the committees. I mean, the police chief and fire chief from each community on that operating on the operating committee are not going to allow that. They're not trained or whatever. And it's really the role of the executive director in the district, but that's going to be part of that hiring process as well. The reporting back to us, I think, is a great thing that Shelby, you brought up, and that we'll know that. But we're going to hear way sooner than we get reports from our chiefs if there's any issues that they're concerned with there. And that gives us within here, we have the ability to walk away if we desire to. I don't expect that to happen. I expect it to be managed properly, but I definitely hear what you're saying. I personally am not concerned with that, and I think part of it, you know, a lot of it is technology. I'm still kind of in a wow thing from when I went to
I
the
was just gonna
Foxborough one to
say,
see that. That was
I-
pretty,
Were you able to attend that? I was not,
No, I
Patrick.
wasn't. But
So
I'll
I
just-
think-
I'll just say I have several
Yeah.
members in my family who are police officers in areas that are part of this discussion as well as outside of this discussion. And they have voiced concerns about that connectivity back to dispatch and that relationship that's there. And that's really where this is coming from, is I am supportive of this, but I am, you know, listening to them as well as to what their experience has been and what their concerns are.
Today, we have members of our dispatch team, they're trained professionals. Many of them don't live and didn't grow up in Westborough, so they learn the community over time. Certainly, in having toured a recently built wreck, the level of technology around, you know, geolocation and hazards and the things you would need to know, like alternate routing in, you know, in certain situations, that was all built into that system and was
impressive.
readily available. As a layperson watching, we happened to be there when there were emergency calls coming in, as you would expect, and even just watching the graphics on the monitors made it, you know, very clear that it takes a lot of the guesswork and, you know, the hunch out of it. It's extremely scientific and engineered to be efficient and safe, and I would expect that to continue. And
Yeah, I'm
Well,
comfortable with
and-
the technology piece. That's that.
yeah,
And the
concerns.
the
And that
level of
relationship is-
professionalization
yeah,
too, of,
professionalization.
I know our chief has talked about that, of the dispatch personnel in a wreck is just that much more, so.
Chief, did you want to add anything, or? You don't have to if you don't want to.
No.
Okay, perfect. No. I got kicked underneath the table saying you might want to speak.
That was
so
my fault. I thought
That's
he
all-
did.
You can blame Christie for that, so.
Yep.
No, there's no reason you have to, so thank you.
Telephone game, I think the message changed.
As it went along.
No, so I think it's good points there. It sounds though it's still supportive, so. So really, I think we should see another kind of what I'll call final draft of this coming out in the next few days. We will put this on our agenda for the 14th. Any concerns or questions you have, please reach out to Christie.
Yeah.
Or you can reach out to me as well. But we will be putting that on the agenda for the vote.
Can I just ask, would it be, like, beneficial to approve this unless there are substantial changes now?
We could, but I mean, I think we can wait till the 14th.
Okay, there's
There's
nothing.
no rush. I mean, it's,
No, I mean, there are other communities that will approve on the 7th or the 14th, so.
Okay,
uh,
okay. Well,
It
if.
actually would probably be good to hear about the outcomes of the discussion with EPA too on the 30th.
Oh, yeah,
Yeah.
good point. Yeah, good point.
Yeah.
Okay, okay. Well, and if we
but if
need,
there's any concerns, I mean, as I said, I mean, there were multiple iterations that went through. What was really good was, I will say, and thanks to Christie, that we kind of met as a full team, and then the town managers, administrators went away and kind of hashed out the details, brought it back to the chairs, whatever, and it was good to see them all coming together in agreement, because there was all amicable conversations, but there were some differences of thoughts and what people were hearing from different communities, and that I think they all felt, or we all felt good that it kind of pulled everybody's kind of thoughts and ideas together in this document, which got everyone to that point where they're ready to bring back. So we'll put this on the agenda, but again, any questions, comments, anything further you may have after when you look through it, feel free, to reach out to myself or to Christie, and we'll put this on the agenda. Great. So now we're jumping to, okay, unless I missed it, item 9, town meeting warrant.
I don't need to walk you through the warrant, but I guess I just wanted to start to kind of understand who you might want to see that you're not going to see on Thursday. So I have the Recreation Department. They have a few different articles. Economic Development, I didn't know if you wanted to see someone related to that small business grant program article. And then the library.
Yeah, Yes, yes, yes.
So this is who we're not gonna see.
This is, you're not gonna see them.
Yeah.
I think we should see all of them.
Okay, Affordable Housing Trust also has an article.
Yes.
Okay.
Did you include library? I'm sorry, did you say
Yep.
library there?
Yep.
Okay, yeah, that's,
Yeah, I think Affordable Housing Trust as well. I would.
Board of Assessors has an article. It's just the reval. Okay.
Nope.
No.
All right.
I'm sorry, I didn't answer
I
for the
actually-
board. Personally, I didn't.
I shouldn't say just the reval, but it's an,
What does Ian wanna see? No,
No.
I'm just kidding.
I think I
No,
mean,
no.
honestly, for me, it's, if one of us wants to see them, please speak up and we'll see them. So I spoke up for the other ones, I wanted to see all of those.
was Hockomock Pond in that list?
not yet, but I'm
Yep.
just working through it.
Yeah.
So Hockomock Pond, and then the town clerk put forward acceptance of a statute, so someone from that office.
I'm sorry, what was that?
The town clerk, in the most recent version, Article 27 is acceptance of an MGL related to being closed on Saturdays for filing purposes. Okay. I'll leave it on my list.
Did you say police department?
Police department you'll see on
Well,
Thursday.
yeah.
So you'll see fire, police, school, IT, and community development on Thursday.
Just so you understand my question, you can bring it to the chief, is article, I want to understand the connection between Article 9 and, excuse me, 9, what's in here, 9, Article 12 and 9, the security articles between them, so.
Okay, so so I can tell you, so, the fire chief was working on a townwide, security assessment, starting with the fire department, so that's that article. And that's looking at cameras, for the whole building. The police department article is for targeted areas within the building, as an outcome of the accreditation assessment.
Right, but in the notes, maybe this is just something in the notes, I believe there was a mention of the security system, so yeah, 9B was also
Right.
included, upgrade of town hall, police department systems as well. So I didn't know what the connection was between those, so maybe just the note needs to be cleaned up.
Maybe I'm talking about the wrong articles. Okay, I'll look at it. And then the planning board, obviously, for the zoning articles.
Yep.
So you said yes to town clerk?
I left her on my
Yep.
list. We can at least talk about
I
it.
think so, yep.
And I think that's everything for now, so we can bring them forward. The other thing that the board needs to consider is when you want to close the warrant. So I've been telling people that we are targeting the 14th, because that's what you typically do. However, this is the first year that town meeting is so much later. So it's March 25th. You only need to close it 7 days before, you need to post it 7 days before the meeting.
I won't be here on the 14th. I might be able to come in remotely, I'll be on vacation.
Okay.
Um,
I mean, you'd have a quorum to
anyway,
vote,
yes.
so. So, I mean, you don't have to decide right now, but it's something to think about, if there's a reason to keep it open longer. One of the things that we've heard from a lot of folks is that, things move around or change, closing it sooner would give people more time with the final document. But even if you close it on the second meeting in February, you would still have a full month, so.
28.
So anyway, just thinking about it
I
for
mean-
the next meeting.
I mean, technically, we could even close it the 14th of March, right?
Yeah, I don't know that we want to do that.
Yeah.
I mean, technically,
Technically.
right, so. I mean, because
I
a
was
lot of
originally
times, I
thinking
know
about
that, like, citizens petitions come in a little closer to the due date.
Yeah,
Sean, you hear what I said? I think I originally said, let's do the 14th and get it done and out there, but I think from a resident and citizen thing, if we went to the 28th, it just gives folks a little bit more time if they have it.
So, meaning have it, I guess.
We
I'm not-
wouldn't close until the 28th versus the 14th.
I
Once we
would-
close the warrant, it's done.
I would appreciate the 28th. I'll try to make myself available, I just don't know if I will be
Yeah,
available,
you're-
but,
Yeah, I mean,
And that still gives them basically a
it's
month.
plenty of time.
Yeah.
okay,
Yeah,
yeah, I'm fine for that.
okay. Okay,
No, and I think that makes sense. I mean, it gives Patrick a time to then watch the meeting, because he's going to see basically who's going to come, the departments coming on the 14th, and then it'd be great if all 5 of us could vote on it.
and we can continue to meet with departments even after you've closed the warrant, because you don't have to vote your support until closer to the town meeting. So it's because there's so many to see, and you might have, it's also possible you have follow-up questions from Thursday, though that's not the purpose. You'll have plenty of time to get all that done. So I'll let folks know that we're targeting that second meeting.
Perfect.
Speaking of warrants.
Yes, so moving forward. So this is not on the warrant, but Board Member Edinburgh had reached out to Christy and myself about consideration of an additional warrant article related to the timing of fall town meeting. So Alan, I'll turn it to you for your thoughts there. And
So some of the feedback we heard after special fall town meeting this year was having it start on a Monday night and only be in the evenings. It is less accessible to many in our community than it would be on Saturday. If we started on Saturday, as we have been doing with annual town meeting, I know we started the move of annual town meeting to Saturday morning because of COVID and the pandemic, but it worked really well. We've continued to do that. And so this change of wording, and I know there are other ideas that are floating around about town meeting and, scheduling and sessions and length and how late at night, things of that nature. Those all are worthy of consideration, discussion, but that's a lengthier conversation. This article would simply run fall town meeting the same way we do annual town meeting, where it starts at 9 a.m. on a Saturday and then would continue to weeknights. And with the select board having the flexibility to otherwise determine a date if necessary, if there's a holiday or some other significant conflict that we felt wouldn't allow us to start at the prescribed Saturday at 9 a.m. The select board can, just as we do with annual town meeting, has the flexibility to alter the start date and time. We did receive an email from John Arnold, who cannot be here tonight, stating that he's comfortable with this change.
yeah, he said no issues, but he thought that this made sense to bring to
Town meeting. Yeah.
for their view. The question, because you just brought it up, is, so it was third Monday, we moved to second Saturday. Is there a reason for second Saturday versus third?
I went with the Saturday before, 2 days before we currently start. It could be third Saturday. It was the way I looked at the calendar.
I think that if you do the third Saturday, you're more likely to be on a holiday weekend, right?
I think second Saturday,
Well, it's the second Monday.
Second Monday.
so the second Saturday might be the holiday weekend. And that was,
Only-
you're hitting, my question would be looking at various holidays, what might be,
I thought about doing second or third, but I was also conscious of the fact that we need, from fall town meeting, we need enough time to allow staff to do the work to prepare for the tax hearing in November.
Yes.
And so I was thinking, I didn't want to push it, if you push it too late in October.
can we just look at that?
Well, my first thought was, I was going to respond to you and say you're going to run into the holiday weekend all the time. But then when I looked at it, because that holiday is the second Monday, you would only run into it when the first fell on a Sunday or Monday.
Right,
So in those years, you could just do a different date.
Gives us discretion.
right.
Right, and you have that discretion anyway, but we wanted people to be clear about that. But yeah, so and if the first falls on a Tuesday through Saturday, then you're fine.
So we're fine 5 out of 7 years.
But not in 2023, I don't think.
We could even make the wording the second or third.
Well, I
in the
think that the
article, but-
purpose of the bylaw is to give people notice of when it regularly falls,
so-
and then you would just make the change. But in 2023, the first is a Sunday, so the second Saturday is the holiday weekend.
So I guess the question here in front of the board is, are we
I like the idea.
comfortable to put this on the
Yeah, I am.
warrant?
And I like sort of this initial change, and that with the understanding, Alan, that you said that some of the other parameters require some further discussion.
Yeah, it's almost a whole
Yeah.
form of government. discussion.
Yeah.
Sean?
Would it make sense at one of our upcoming meetings to have a brief public hearing to gain feedback prior to town meeting? I mean, slot 15 minutes or something in case people feel strongly about it, or people will let us know how they feel at annual town meeting.
I think if you're, in the past, when we've had those sort of public hearings on general bylaw changes, which are not required, it's when you're looking for feedback because you might change it. If what you don't want to do is set up a meeting where you've already decided what you want to put forward to town meeting and have people feel like they're coming in and giving their opinion that they really should be giving at town meeting. So if you're looking for feedback on when it should be, then you might change it, then that's purposeful.
Gotcha.
Well,
So unless people are coming in going, August works better for me, then, okay.
I do think, I think, I heard from others that people were wondering why we didn't do Saturday, keep it consistent, Saturday, 9 AM. I'm good with, I think it makes sense to put it out there and let the town debate it and decide.
It'll be interesting to see how that change, if it does what it's intended to drive additional attendance. Saturdays can be a really tough time for people, so I don't know if it's gonna gain or not, but I'm open to the idea of it.
Well, let's be honest, the only people we heard with were the people who weren't happy that it was on Monday night. If you were okay with it on Monday night, then you didn't say anything.
Right.
So, it could be that it was a very small minority that made, but let's find out.
Consistent, I think it's consistent with how we do
Annual
our
town.
annual town meeting. People have plenty of time to plan in advance.
Yeah.
Satisfy everybody.
People are welcome
I
to.
think it's good to
No,
ask
I
questions.
know.
People are welcome to
I
send
mean, I
us
couldn't make the
emails,
last
come to
one.
open forum
Yep.
at our
Right.
meetings between now and town meeting, as well as come to town meeting.
Right. I couldn't
And
attend the last one. That was a very
discuss.
difficult decision, but that's life.
Well,
Oops.
and
You don't
And
like it, huh?
well, I think our goal is to maximize
Attendance.
attendance and, the availability, and so, we put that out there in hopes that this is what people believe.
Perfect. We got it. Add it.
Great.
Okay.
Thank you, Alan.
Yes.
Thank you for bringing it forward. Good.
Unless there, missed something, I think we're on to item 16, which is issues and correspondence to select board. Is that correct? Or did I
I think
miss?
so.
Yeah, I think you got everything.
Okay. Shelby, I'm going to start with you tonight.
Okay.
Sorry, I didn't forewarn you.
Oh, my goodness. No, I'm actually prepared, so that's good. So a couple of items. I just want to, I'm sure the members of the board may have seen this. I did point this out to our town manager, but unfortunately, I have personally observed, and it's been pointed out to me, that there seems to be an abundance of cars at East Main Mobile. I'm not out there counting them, and the High Street entrance, that second higher entrance as you go up the road has been routinely blocked as I've seen it. So I would just share that with our town manager in an earlier discussion today, and just want to call the board's attention to that. So I know that there are a number of things that the owner, Mr. Azar, is working through with the town and his attorney, but even during this period of working through things, it seems like the clarity of the board's message isn't getting through. So I'm just sharing that. I have, I'm not sure how we address this, but it seems like we don't necessarily have consistency across boards and committees with publicly posting agendas and minutes on the website. I'm not saying that they're not properly posted through our town clerk, but in this day and age, I just don't think it's practical for members of the public to have to come to the town clerk and say, can I get a copy of this? And it also makes it difficult for board members and committee members to obtain that information if their chair isn't emailing it. So, we have an amazing committee handbook. I'm not sure how we sort of maybe, and as we appoint new members, I know Owen was extremely helpful with the request I had recently to get some meeting minutes, so appreciate the town manager's support in that. But I think we just need to be more consistent. particularly as we see heightened engagement from the public in town government or interest in government, so.
Can I just to comment on that, that's something that Owen's working on, is making sure that people are posting. So it's in process.
Yeah. And I feel like my opinion here is that with the change in the town clerk, and maybe there's an opportunity to streamline some processes. I know as a chair myself, like I post it and then I've got to go in and I've got to post it to the website. I mean, it's not a fluid process. Plus we're allowing access to our town's website that A, I'm not sure everyone is comfortable with, and B, I'm not sure it's necessary. So I think that there's some opportunity to streamline that. Sorry.
Yeah. No, I just, you'll actually, this isn't specific to, it's specific to boards and committees keeping their websites updated, but you'll hear from our IT director that one of his PIR forms is actually a board and committee management system. So that isn't speaking necessarily to minutes, but keeping names updated is something that we struggle with. So, and this is created to deal with that.
Yeah.
So you'll hear about that on Thursday.
Great, and consistency across those pages. So I think it's really important. In particular, I noticed that the wastewater treatment plan board in particular is significantly out of date. There are a couple of agendas there and a couple of minutes, and it's very sparse, and it's like not a board we hear a lot from, but where a significant amount of resources go to. So anyway, aren't you glad I'm going first? Just in terms of kind of my committee participation, we've spent a lot of time today talking about waste management, exploratory committee. I just want to give the board a heads up, and certainly Ian, you as chair, I think the goal of that committee is to come to this board in the March-April timeframe with an update. Is that?
The Hakamaka?
No, waste management.
I'm sorry.
Sorry.
I can't remember when the
I
next
feel
one
like
is.
it's that timeframe with a kind of, here are our recommendations, what does the board think? And then Hakamaka, just so the board is aware, I don't think I provided this update, we did provide a scope of work to the LSP tie and bond for them to provide a proposal back to the town as to what the work plan would cost to develop based on the open space use that we're proposing. So that is out, and that committee, Patrick, you've already requested that, but would be coming with that recommendation and the proposal ultimately for town meeting. Huge kudos, Ian, you usually do this, but to DPW for the recent storm clearing. That was a nasty storm. And so I know when I went out this morning, the roads were just spectacular. Not necessarily personal driveways or sidewalks, but the roads were spectacular. So kudos to them for that first storm response. And then kind of ending on a positive note, I want to thank the organizers, the many organizers of the Martin Luther King event. It was very well attended. I don't have a number, but I want to say probably close to 200 people. And I do want to point out that there's a follow-up event for folks on Saturday, January 28th, this Saturday, from 2 to 4 p.m. at Westborough High School Library. It's journey mapping, and it's a small group format where adults and adolescents 14 plus have the opportunity to connect with each other and explore ways in which we can live out Dr. King's dream. This will be a facilitated event with some brainstorming and then guided prompts. There's no experience with journey mapping. You don't have to Google it, conversation circles or anything. It's an event open to all, and all are welcome. So if you want more information, you can go to westboroughconnects.org /programs. Thank you.
Thank you. Sean?
Yeah, thank you very much. So the Library Building Committee had a meeting earlier this month, and so based on the feedback from the December town meeting, we're looking to get an assessment or a cost for what the repairs necessary at the library will cost. So the Library Building Committee made the decision to stay with the current architect, LPAA, and the current owner's project manager, Vertex, so we could sort of try and move forward quickly and bring something forward for annual town meeting. At the last library building committee meeting, we went through what it was felt the line items were, and then sort of bucketed them into 3 different categories, and what was required, what was recommended, and what was optional. And I think people can go to, once the meeting minutes come out, people can go through exactly what was determined there, but basically going back to the architects to try and get an estimate that the Library Board of Trustees will come forward with for the amount needed to actually get this done and determine a future cost potentially for that repair. So more to come over the next couple weeks. The next Library Building Committee meeting is this coming Tuesday at 3:30. Thank you.
Great. Alan?
Okay. Received over the last several weeks a couple of communications expressing a desire or a wish that the senior bus service was extended to Saturday, that their seniors who, even though they can do their shopping during the week and have appointments, they feel stranded and isolated on the weekends. That really begs a bigger question about transportation on the weekends, potentially even, the VIA service expanding. So a request that, at an appropriate future meeting, and this might be something that needs to wait till it fits into select board goals, given everything that's already on our plate, but a discussion about looking at some of the transportation. This would, after the seniors assessment is done, and we'll have that feedback as well. But maybe even, including representatives from the Council on Aging, including the folks from VIA and WRTA, to say, okay, we have some needs, and how can we get creative to, given how well the VIA service is doing, can it be expanded, and can we leverage that success?
Alan and I talked about this. I mean, I really think that we have put money into the senior needs assessment.
But I'm saying
so
after the
right,
senior
but
needs
it might,
assessment.
I think it'll be important to understand what the priorities are of the senior
Yeah.
needs assessment, because there might be other implementation priorities.
Agreed.
We just don't know.
Right.
Yeah.
And if it's something that isn't a high priority from the senior needs assessment, then I would still at some point like to have WRTA and VIA come in and talk about how well this VIA service is doing, how it's growing, and potential plans. There's still parts of Westborough that aren't covered. I've gotten feedback that, man, this would be great, to help get around on the weekends,
Yeah,
or get kids to activities.
and maybe it's as simple as really educating the seniors who utilize the bus that the VIA service is available and how to use it, bless you, and how to use it, right? So I had actually noted that as Christy was giving her update of what was going on with the senior center, but I think it, particularly with some of the breakdowns of the buses and accidents and stuff, it just might be something now that folks just
Yeah.
need to be comfortable with using, particularly VIA.
Yeah,
even
no,
if-
I agree with the short term. My request isn't anything that's like, I'm not expecting to see on an agenda in the next,
Yeah.
3, 4, 10 meetings maybe, but just at some point.
Next chair's agenda.
It could be. I mean, and it could be something that the consensus is, come March, April, we reassess our goals and we wait to see if this would be a goal for next year, right? But,
The timing of
strategic
the
growth.
senior needs
Yeah.
assessment will be good for your goal setting.
yeah, so.
Yeah.
if it-
But also add to that, just a point on VIA, there has been, people have indicated to me that there's a desire to also understand how it's going to be broadened to other communities. So for example, we have members in our communities who don't have cars, who want to get to Hopkinton to use other food services because, they need to, right? So be interesting to understand from VIA as to what the longer term WRTA plans are for VIA.
And that's something that's important to understand, is that the relationship with us is through WRTA.
Right.
And so, so that's sort of what creates the scope of that service.
Yeah.
But
How do we give them feedback on that
So-
though as a community?
I mean, we do have regular meetings, but,
Yeah.
or the town planner does, but yeah, I mean, I think everything you're asking for makes sense, so.
That is all?
That's it?
Yeah, actually staying on the same senior theme here. Two things that they have to, oddly enough, they have to do with prescriptions. I've had a couple of seniors reach out to me. One is there any ability for the town through the EDC to attract additional pharmacies? There's only one pharmacy in Westborough now. And, you know, they'd like to see some more competition, for lack of a better word, and I don't know if that's something that could be worked through the EDC to see if there's a way to attract. The second piece of that on prescriptions is, I'm not going to get into details about this particular person's situation, but let's just say that they were caught in a situation where an extreme expense was put forward by their insurance company, unexpected for their prescription costs. Why is this important to the town, or what am I asking for? I'm wondering if there's an opportunity through the senior center, and I don't know if they do this already, so they may, to provide prescription guidance, not necessarily specific to what prescriptions, but how do you manage your prescriptions? What is the pharmaceutical industry expecting for changes to prescriptions? In this particular case, this person was getting a 3-month prescription for $25, and they were told 2 days before their life-saving prescription expired that it was going to go up to $400, and they were on a fixed income. So that's just, you know, how do our seniors be made aware of potential future prescription costs that are coming down the pipeline, as an example. So I don't know if the senior center does anything like that as far as, and I don't think it's something that was in the senior assessment need. Maybe it was.
Well, it's
but-
almost kind of education and self-advocacy in like
Exactly.
the insurance kind of, you know, navigating that space with your with the prescriber and the pharmacy and your insurance, and how do you do that? What are the questions to ask?
Right, like, is there a way we could have
Yep.
local pharmacists and or doctors come in and talk? I'm not looking, I don't think there's a request to review their prescriptions,
No.
but to understand some best practice.
They actually are doing.
Yeah, I think I did hear about that, but
nursing.
Yes.
best practices on how do I manage it, and what can I expect in the future? Those are the two things. So, anyway, that was it, thank you.
Great, thanks. I have nothing this evening, so I'll save you from that. John,
Except to thank Westborough TV.
you just did that.
There you go.
So I don't have to-
Thank you, Westborough.
As always.
So do
Ready?
you say something before I do this?
No, you start first.
Oh,
Make the
oh.
motion and I say it.
Oh, okay. We move to executive session under Mass General Law, Chapter 30A, Section 21A2, to conduct strategy sessions in preparation for negotiations with non-union personnel. Police Chief Jeff Laurie. Under Mass General Law, Chapter 30A, Section 21A3, to discuss strategy with respect to collective bargaining with the following unions: patrol officers, clerical, Department of Public Works. Under Mass General Law, Chapter 30A, Section 21A3, to discuss strategy with respect to litigation regarding Ferris Development Group, LLC versus Town of Westborough, Lax Media, LLC, and Lax Media MA, LLC, Worcester Superior Court, case number 2285CV01281. Under Mass General Law, Chapter 30A, Section 21A3, to discuss strategy with respect to litigation regarding Town of Westborough versus Westborough SPE, LLC, Worcester Land Court, 19 TL 000768. Under Mass General Law, Chapter 30A, Section 21A7, to act under the authority of the Select Board to approve executive session minutes of December 13th, 2022, 2 sessions, December 27th, 2022, and January 10th, 2023.
And I declare that an open session would have a detrimental effect on the town's bargaining and litigating position, and also that the board will not be reconvening in an open meeting at the conclusion of the executive session. Is there a second to the motion?
Seconded?
Seconded. All those in favor, roll call vote.
Welch, yes.
Edinburgh, yes?
Johnson, yes.
EO, yes?
Marshall, yes.
We are in executive session.